Okay, so it was a Tuesday. I remember it was a Tuesday because I was doing laundry, which is such a stupid detail to remember, but that's genuinely what I was doing. Folding a t-shirt actually pulled up my accounts for a totally unrelated reason. I think I was hunting down a receipt for a return, some Amazon thing, and I glanced at the number at the bottom. Total net worth. Everything added up. Retirement account, brokerage, house equity, checking, the whole picture. 7 figures. First time ever seeing that. I just stood there, holding a t-shirt, like a full 10 seconds of nothing, just staring at my phone in my own bedroom like it was going to say something different if I looked again. And I wish I had some story about calling someone, screaming, whatever. My wife was in the next room. I could hear her doing something on her laptop. I said nothing. Finished the laundry. Made dinner. I think it was tacos. Weirdly specific thing to remember, but I do. And went to bed like it was a completely normal Tuesday. Which I guess it was, for everyone except me. That was almost 2 years ago. My wife found out a few months later, by accident, not because I told her. And besides her, nobody knows, not my parents, not my best friend, not one single coworker, nobody. This is a video about why, I guess, and also, honestly, whether that was even the right call, because I still don't fully know the answer to that one. Here's a thing nobody warns you about hitting a number like that. There's no music. Nothing changes. I didn't feel different walking around. My actual checking account balance looked exactly the same as the week before, because most of that number was locked away somewhere I couldn't touch. 401k. I can't access for like 20 more years. Home equity that's great on paper and does absolutely nothing for buying groceries. So honestly, my first instinct wasn't even secrecy. It was just, nothing about it felt urgent enough to say out loud. What was I gonna do? Text the family group chat. Hey, hit 1 million by the way. Anyway, what time's Thanksgiving? It felt weirdly embarrassing to bring up. Not because I was ashamed, more because saying it out loud changes the whole shape of a conversation, and I wasn't ready for that shift yet. Still kind of not, honestly. I'd actually seen this play out with someone else already, which probably shaped how I reacted more than I realized at the time. Guy I knew in college, not using his name, got a decent settlement from a lawsuit, nothing crazy but noticeable. Within like 6 months, every conversation with certain people in his life had this weird undertone to it. Somebody needed rent help just this once. Somebody had a business idea, wanted him in on it. His own brother actually stopped inviting him to their Sunday poker thing, and when my buddy asked why, his brother just said, and I remember this word for word because it stuck with me. It's kind of awkward now. Money doesn't just sit there quietly once people know. It becomes part of every interaction you have with them after that, whether you want it to or not. You're either the guy who can help, or the guy who should help, or the guy who's changed, or, this one's the weirdest, the guy who hasn't changed at all, which somehow reads as suspicious too, like you're hiding something by acting normal. I'm not saying this to sound bitter about people. Most people genuinely aren't trying to take anything from you. But even the well-meaning ones treat you differently once they know. And that difference basically never lands in your favor emotionally. It just adds weight to stuff that used to be simple. If I'm being actually honest with myself, and it took me a good while to admit this part, I think I kind of like being underestimated. There's something I genuinely enjoy about sitting at my in-laws' table at Christmas, everyone assuming I'm just, fine, comfortable, nothing special, and knowing that's not quite the whole picture. Nobody's watching what I spend. Nobody's got opinions about the car. which for the record is a 2016 Camry, over 140,000 miles on it now, because nobody expects it to be anything else. There's this book, The Millionaire Next Door. A lot of people in this space have probably heard of it, where the researchers found most actual millionaires in this country don't look the part at all. Normal cars, normal houses, you'd walk right past them. Meanwhile, the people who look rich, the flashy cars and the obvious lifestyle stuff, are disproportionately the ones actually drowning, financing the appearance of it instead of having the actual thing. I didn't set out to be a walking example from that book, but I basically am one now, and I think that's honestly part of why the number got this big in the first place. Nobody was watching, so nobody was shaping how I spent. No keeping up with anybody, no explaining myself to anybody, no performance. And I gotta say, this wasn't some genius move on my part. I didn't pick a winning stock or time crypto right, or any of that. It was 15 years, 15, that's not an exaggeration, of maxing out my 401k match, throwing extra into index funds whenever there was breathing room, and buying a house I could actually afford instead of the number the bank said I qualified for, which, by the way, were two wildly different numbers. It's boring. Genuinely boring. Doesn't make for a great story at a party, which honestly is probably part of why I never brought it up even casually. I invested consistently for a decade and a half and didn't overspend. Nobody's leaning in for that one. I'm not going to pretend this has been some perfect decision with zero cost, because it hasn't been. There's a specific kind of lonely in this, not gonna lie. I can't really talk finances with the people closest to me, because any real number I mention starts revealing the bigger picture, so I end up staying vague even in moments where actual honesty would probably help. My best friend vents about his 401k sometimes, and I just nod along instead of really engaging, because if I said what I actually think, he'd start doing math in his head about how exactly I know that. There's a guilt piece too sometimes. Watching people I genuinely care about stress over money I could help with and barely feel it, and choosing not to, because I've watched what happens to a relationship the second money crosses it, even when everyone involved has good intentions. That one doesn't sit easy. I flip back and forth on whether I'm protecting myself or just being selfish about it, and depending on the day I land somewhere different. If any of this is even a little close to your situation, doesn't have to be a full million, just more saved than the people around you realize. Here's where I've landed after way too much time thinking about this. Staying quiet isn't the same as being dishonest with people. It's just recognizing that money changes the physics of a relationship the second it's visible, whether you meant for it to or not. You don't owe anyone that information just because they're close to you. Your finances are allowed to be private, same as plenty of other private things in your life, and keeping it that way doesn't make you a liar. But, and I think this part matters just as much, don't let the secrecy shrink you either. I spent a while almost apologizing to myself internally for having money, downplaying it even in my own head, and that's its own weird, unhealthy thing. You can do both. Keep it private, and still let yourself actually feel good about what you built, instead of treating the whole thing like something to hide out of guilt. So, yeah. Standing in my kitchen with a t-shirt in my hands, 7 figures on a screen, and just going back to folding laundry. Almost 2 years later, still basically nobody knows, still driving the same Camry, still nodding along when my friend complains about his retirement account like I don't already know exactly where things stand. I don't know if I'll ever actually tell people. Maybe my kids, eventually, whenever that feels right. For now, it just sits there, quietly doing what money's actually supposed to do: exist and grow, without needing anybody to know about it for it to be real. If this made you wonder who around you might quietly be doing better than they let on, subscribe. Next one, I'm getting into the actual signs that separate real wealth from the stuff people perform online.